Snow Cannon Games is not your average independent video game publisher. Lynn?
We're a distributed team, which means that we must rely on technology to conduct our business.
And deal with the minor challenges that come along with it.
But it also allows us to recruit top-tier talent from around the world.
People who are highly opinionated, but have earned that right through their decades of experience as thought leaders in the game industry.
People who have worked on a global scale and who understand the value of sharing their knowledge with the community.
People with proven track records, incredible integrity,
and the ability to just get done.
People like Espen Askvik, our CEO, skillful leader and accomplished entrepreneur who can recognize potential and grow it into multi-million-dollar profit.
People like Lynn Søvik, our Chief Operating Officer, who has worked tirelessly to raise global awareness for Norway's games industry, including founding the largest developers conference in the country.
People like Emmy Jonassen, our Chief Marketing Officer, whose scientific approach to marketing, which she applies to her work as a consultant and on our blog Indie Game Girl, has helped countless developers generate results.
Or people like our executive producers, Jeffrey Zatkin and Dimitri Detsaridis, and our interim design director, James Portnow. Their years of experience working on top-grossing franchises across multiple platforms help us provide clients with the solutions and expertise needed to make their games market-ready.
But most importantly, the kind of people who make up our team are the kind of people who understand the needs of indies.
And share the same vision of what a publisher would look like that puts those needs first.
Our choice clients are those whose work does not necessarily conform to mainstream interests, yet oozes with creativity and fun factor.
These are the games we believe should be published and no longer ignored.
They are also the kinds of games that without our help may remain unpublished or be unsuccessful.
Not because of lack of talent, but because of lack of access to the type of resources they need to succeed.
Our mission is to use our marketing, sales, design, monetization, and funding expertise, as well as our vast network,
to help underserved developers reach broader audiences and publish financially successful titles.
And we can't wait to get started.
We are Snow Cannon Games.
We're Snow Cannon Games.
We are 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 Snow Cannon Games.
Thank you. That's not at all embarrassing.
So, can everybody hear me? Is that, I'm on, right? Yep. Let's say that. Okay. So hi, everybody, and welcome to the launch of Snow Cannon Games. We wanted, first of all, to thank the library here in Bergen for hosting this launch. We're really psyched about that, and we're very happy with all the work that they do for the game developing community here in Bergen with their initiative Gamebrary, so check it out. So the things that we thought we'd do today is basically we want to introduce ourselves, and Espen Askvik, our CEO, is going to hold a little presentation about what Snow Cannon Games is going to be doing, and then we're going to have a little panel discussion on some questions that people have been sending us through the internet. And so we'll be about an hour, and then after that we'll mingle and party after that. So let's start off with introducing ourselves individually, and I think we should start with you, Espen.
Well, thank you, Lynn. So I am Espen Askvik. I am CEO of Snow Cannon Games. Previously, I worked 6 years as a portfolio manager and financial analyst on a big equity portfolio, and 10 years as an entrepreneur in the mobile software business. And now I'm ready to work in the game sector.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Emmy Jonassen. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Snow Cannon Games. I have about 10 years of marketing experience. It didn't start in games. I actually started in advertising and then worked my way to games through kind of working on a AAA game engine, doing consumer marketing for that. But my specialty is mostly in consumer marketing, user acquisition, lead generation, those kinds of things. You might also know me through indiegamegirl.com, my blog where I offer free marketing advice geared toward indie game developers. And I'm very excited to be here with this team today.
Cool. I'm Dimitri Detsaridis. I have been in the games industry about 15 years. and started out in casual games, and then moved on to console and PC stuff, then went to mobile 4 years too soon, and then social right at exactly the right time, and then left social right at exactly the right time. For the last couple of years, I've been back in AAA console working on a very large game about driving and shooting.
10 years before that, I was one of the original designers on a game called EverQuest and did a whole bunch of MMOs after that. And in 2006 with a buddy, I started a market research firm for games called EDAR, and we're now the single biggest video game market research firm in the world. And so I'm actually kind of a mixture between dev and business. And I'm super excited to be on Snow Cannon.
Hey everybody, I'm James Portnow. I'm a designer by trade. I've worked on games ranging from the Call of Duty series to Farmville. And besides that, I'm probably better known as a tiny animated bean person on the internet because I write a show called Extra Credits. And I am really excited to get to do this endeavor with you.
Excellent.
Who are you, Lynn?
I'm Lynn Sovic. I'm Chief Operating Officer, Snow Cannon Games. So I've basically been working the last 10 years trying to get into the games industry, pretty much doing anything that I could think of that would help me there.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So I've worked a lot with the local game developers, and we've started the conference that is starting tomorrow, which is called Console. So very proud of that, and worked on different initiatives like Game Dev Norway as well. Yep, that's me. I keep forgetting that I'm moderating this thing. Next up, we have Espen is going to give us a little presentation about Snow Cannon Games. So Espen, give it away.
Well, thank you. So Snow Cannon Games is a publisher. That means that we help video game developers to reach broader audiences by helping them promote their games. So we're going to talk a little bit about the games market, because the video game market is all about passion, creativity, and fun, right? Also, it's a very serious business. Actually, it's grossing $100 billion these days, and still growing quite healthily. And as we can see on the slide, something amazing has happened, truly amazing has happened in Sweden and Finland, and also other places. So the games area, the games sector, has been an area for fantastic value creation over time. If you look at it and put it to perspective, actually Mojang, who was bought by Microsoft, was sold for more money than the Chinese bought Volvo for, which I think is quite interesting for the days that we live in.
Yeah, if that slide went up to 2015, the red bar would just go right up through the top of the library.
Absolutely. So if we look a little bit about where this market comes from, there are two major things that have happened the last 10 years. One is digitalization of distribution, enabling developers to reach a potentially global audience. And the other thing is standardization on the platform side, Unity kind of leading the pack. But both of these things have shortened the value chain and brought down actually the barriers to entry to the games industry. This, in turn, has led to a lot of companies establishing themselves there, which is exactly what should happen after economic theory. And the number of game development studios have exploded the last years. If we look at the lower chart there, you see total release quantities in the US for all platforms except mobile the last decade. And you can see the cycles where the 7th generation consoles are replaced by the 8th generation consoles, and you can see that the number of Steam releases last year actually tripled from 500 to 1600, more than tripled. And this year again, it's going to double, because the 2015 bar there, that's a year-to-date figure, 2,309 games released, so it'll double again. And that makes it really hard to be seen and creates this discoverability problem. So even if your game is really good, and if you're not able to do all the things that you should and spend resources and money on marketing, then there's a good chance that the game won't be discovered and won't be played and won't do as well as it should. And if we add mobile to this, actually it gets a lot worse, as most people in the industry know, because we're literally talking 100,000 more games yearly. And if we only took out those games who ever reached the top 50 chart, the picture looks like this. And that's a quite, I'd call it a perfect storm to navigate in if you're a game dev studio and launching into this without kind of doing all the things that you need to do in order to launch a game. At the same time, nothing has happened, or very little at least, has happened on the publisher side. So there's a lot of pent-up demand among developers, and this market is severely underserved. Also, there's a lot of room for service innovation, and we'll contribute to that by continuing to sharing knowledge and creating innovating new products to lower the threshold to consume publisher services, really. So why should anyone use a publisher? After this, it's quite evident that the game dev studios who have got a lot of freedom from kind of being independent and with lower barriers to enter the market still need a lot of help, because there are so many things you need to do right when you launch your game, which is in itself a very hard thing to do, actually, if you think about it. And this is virtually impossible if half of your team are game designers and the other half are developers who are kind of working to finish it, to manage all these processes. In addition to that, if you pay attention to details in this, there are so many mistakes that you can avoid that costs an awful lot of money. And that's where we think that we can contribute. The publisher model is a proven business model. It's fairly simple. The publisher gets a share of the revenue, and to earn its revenue, it needs to contribute to really sell more games. And if you take the traditional publisher cut, which is 30%, that means you have to help the developer sell 42% more games. And if you do all the things that you need to do over time in order to launch a game, in many cases we can contribute to sell 5 to 10 times as many games, and more than that as well. So we really believe in the value proposition and have set out to find the best possible talent that we can provide to the market. Also, a publisher can provide funding, which is very hard for indie games to attract. The reason for this, I mentioned I worked 6 years on the investor side of things, and we often looked at games, and that's also what I hear when I talk to investors these days, that investing in games is perceived very risky. And there are many reasons for that, but the most important maybe is that you have all the investment up front, and you don't know how well the game is going to do, at the same time as it's a very competitive market. So with this binary outcome, a financial investor is skeptical to kind of putting all eggs in one basket. And that's one area where we can provide a portfolio approach so that the investor gets diversification, but at the same time exposure to a very attractive and growing sector. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I want to introduce the first game that we are publishing, which will be on the VU platform, released very soon. Shadow Puppeteer is a beautiful game with fantastic artwork, Tim Burton style, beautiful soundtrack, and a magical, strange and magical world of shadows and light, where we play with light, gravity, and cooperation between a boy and his shadow, trying to escape the evil Shadow Puppeteer. So with that, I give the word back to Lynn and say,
okay.
You're not going to mention that in that first slide about the Nordics, the Swedes are winning? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Are we going to let the Swedes beat us? Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Espen.
Good comment.
I did mention that the questions that we've gotten are questions that people have been posting to us on Twitter and Facebook. We got an opportunity to look through them like half an hour ago, and everything is going to be very raw. You're going to see us thinking live.
These are not rehearsed answers.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to say. Yeah, but. So I'm just wondering, can I get somebody to get the lights up a little bit so that people can see us from now, because we're not going to be using the screen. And the very first question that we have is one that's for all of us. And
Wait, we have to talk?
yeah.
I said coffee.
Do you,
No.
Oh, Jeff.
Congratulations, you've demonstrated how unrehearsed this is.
Exactly.
So the first question is, why are each of you involved in Snow Cannon Games? So if we could all sort of give a personal answer on why we're working with Snow Cannon Games. And I think, again, we should start with you, Espen, and then go down.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, there are many reasons, Lynn. As I mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur myself the past decade, and I really love working with passionate entrepreneurs, and I see an opportunity of doing that by working in Snow Cannon Games. And actually, I'm really passionate about games also, so that's a fairly good combination. And I love working with great talent, which also it's very motivating in itself. And as I mentioned also, I do think that the timing to set up a publisher and think new in this sector is very good. Yeah, Emmy.
I think for me, working in the indie space for so long has been both wonderful and heartbreaking. And as a marketing person, seeing the way that indies struggle with the challenge of discoverability, which I believe is the #1 challenge facing indies right now, I've come across so many games and I've worked with so many developers and I've talked to so many developers that have just produced these beautiful pieces of art to only see them kind of crash and burn because of the challenge of discoverability. And for me, it's a really important thing for me to be able to help developers overcome those challenges with marketing and see these games succeed. And that's a big passion of mine personally, and one that I'm very excited about being able to contribute to the team.
Excellent.
Dimitri.
There are a bunch of different reasons, of course, but the most, I think the most kind of recent one is maybe that I've worked for a lot of different shops over the course of my career and done a lot of different things, but I think one of the things that I kind of got really excited about was bringing data analysis into the games industry. We all know how you can do that and screw everything up, right? Like there are a lot of companies that have demonstrated for us how you can let data lead the picture and then everything blows up and it's all horrible. I'm fairly certain that this can be done better. And in my last job, we spent a lot of time doing it better, and it worked. A lot of people really liked that game. But that's one game, and it took 2 years, and so you're not really making a dramatic impact on the business by contributing to one game over the course of a few years. So the idea of being able to touch 20, 50 different things in the span of a single year or 2 years is really great, and kind of trying to help people realize that a lot of the stuff that that is actually neutral technology is not like an evil thing that's going to wreck your design. That knowing more about your customer is actually a very good thing.
Mm.
My turn?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Plus he told me to do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's because he told me to do it. This is actually true. But one of the reasons I started my last company, EDAR, which is a market research firm, is I'd spent 10 years making games and watching a whole bunch of my friends' games go out of business, or make a game that cost this much to make and brought in this much money, and then the company went out of business. And I worked for one of those, where we did it, and they made a great game, and then the sister team made a game that made so little money that our whole studio got shut down. And so when my friend and I went to form the research company, we said, we've got to figure out a way to do better diligence and better research so that you can make games for a living and not keep watching your things go out of business. And at this point, our market research company is really good, and we work with Sony and Nintendo and Activision and all of these big companies, but I've never been figuring out how to adapt it to an indie model as a really big company. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. I went to the very first Indiecade, was on their board for a while. I was an indie as a designer before a professional designer. So this is a chance for me to come in and work with a group that can work with a whole bunch of small studios and bring the stuff that we've learned on the $100 million games and bring that wisdom into the smaller games and help lift them up in the same way we've been doing the bigger ones. And for me, that's really exciting.
For
James.
me, it's been a bit of a journey. About a year ago, Lynn brought me out here to meet with many of you and sort of assess the games industry here in Norway and ask, what can we do to really build up the games industry here? How can we really kickstart the industry here so people are making a living and people are publishing the games, the art that they love. And I spent 3 months kicking around, getting to look at so many fabulous games. And at the end, Lynn asked me, okay, so what do we need to do? And I said, well, unfortunately, there's a lot of great games, but there's none of the support people need. There's none of the marketing and distribution help that people need to get these games seen. And so there needs to be a publisher, and I'm sorry, without a publisher, it's never really going to grow around here. And then I went back to the States. I didn't really think about it, right? And then 6 months later, I had a call from these two on Skype being like, we have something to talk to you about. And then they told me about Snow Cannon Games. And my life's hectic, and so I was like, oh, I don't know. And then Lynn tells me, no, it's not just for Norway. We're talking about underserved markets of the world. We're talking about all the underserved markets. How can we do this better for all the people who have suffered some of the same things that you guys here, the developers here, have struggled with for years? And at that point, all I could say is I'm in. So that's why I'm with Snow Cannon Games.
There you go.
So why am I in Snow Cannon Games? Well, as I said earlier, I've always wanted to work in the games industry. I've been working very hard to get here. But it does excite me, and I think every day working with you guys has excited me a lot. So working with games, helping them get onto a global scale is something of the most exciting thing I can think of to do. And I've been working, as I said, a little bit with the Norwegian games industry, and it's so exciting being able to provide that service as well. I guess yeah. We'll keep it there. Or else I'm going to sit here for half an hour and talk more philosophically everything. But we can have a drink later and I'll talk more about it. So the next question is, so somebody else sent this. So it says, in your mission statement, you use the phrase underserved developers. What do you mean by underserved? And we've allocated this question first to Espen, Dimitri, and then James.
Thank you, Lynn. So, underserved, well, we've discussed this a lot, and actually you can look at it in many different ways. But one of the things that's quite clear here is that the number of game dev studios have increased with maybe 3 or 5 times the last 5-10 years, and it's the same thing has not happened on the publisher side. On the contrary, you see a concentration towards rerun of the most successful franchises in the AAA business, and very little attention to the indie scene. So, yeah, there's a lot of pent-up demand as a result of that, because there are very many studios that exist and don't have access to this type of resources.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about sort of underservedness is even...
Is that a word?
Well, it is now.
Okay.
Even though it's the new distribution methods like Steam and the iOS App Store and Android App Store, they've sort of reduced the barrier to entry to the point where, it's not that hard to get your game up on Steam or into the various app stores. But once you get it there, lots of luck, right? It just like floats out into the teeth of 100,000 games a year being released, and that is something that we've dealt with now for years, and there are ways to not have your game totally disappear, and one of the ways in which we want to serve developers is to help them make money. You're going to need it the next time you want to make a game. So I think that folks out there that don't have a lot of experience, that haven't been in the business side of this, is also kind of underserved by the publishers, because rather than taking people for a ride, we want to kind of bring them along for the ride.
To me, underserved is actually, I mean, right now there are just a lot of voices that aren't being heard, right? There are a lot of groups that, I mean, the majority of games that you ever see come from a very small group of people in a very few places around the world. And it's time we change that, because there's so much more we can do with games. There's so much more I'd like to see out of games that will come from ideas that are outside of that realm, right? And so to me, that's underserved.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question for that.
All right.
What excites you about working with underserved developers?
Well, I mean, just exactly that, right? Like, for me, even coming here, right, I'm so used to the US, and I go and I consult on AAA games all the time, and I see the same games, right, with a different skin, and I'm solving the same problems over and over again. And then I came here, and I talked to a lot of you, and there were all these unique ideas that came sort of out culturally out of Norway, out of the milieu and the backgrounds that you guys had that we didn't have in the US. And I've seen that with lots of groups, whether it be geographic or sociological, right? That there's all these ideas that I'm really excited to see enter games, all these ideas that we haven't really touched on with this new mass medium, right? This mass medium that can delve so much further into the human experience. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see that out of these underserved developers.
Yeah, that's very much what excites me as well. I want to see what boundaries we can stretch and break, and see how far we can take this medium. I can't really say anything more though, because that was very beautifully put. But I'm very passionate about that. I want to see a more diverse games market, and I think that's one of the things.
It'd be hard to see a less diverse games market.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. But okay, so one more question. Or no, we have several more questions. Sorry. Okay, next question is, how important do you think it is to consider market viability from the concept phase of a project? So the first one up is Emmy to answer that question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The people in the stream, I tend to breathe heavily into these things, so I don't want them hearing like Darth Vader in the background. So I just unmuted my mic. I think, well, again, I think here it really depends on kind of how you define success. I mean, if you want to publish a game that you feel very passionately about and you're not necessarily publishing it for anyone else than just, an internal need that you have, that's one thing. But if you do want to increase your chances at financial success or also success in the number of people that hear about your game and play your game, I think that market viability has to be something that you think about right from the start. And there are many ways to do this that we've actually talked about before in my presentations at Console in previous years. But I think the best one is really to understand and know your primary target audience right from the beginning. So if you are designing for males between the ages of 25 to 34 and you're doing, for example, a first-person shooter, you should really know that market inside and out. Know things like what motivates them to play those games, what frustrates them about those games, what they love about those games, and tailor the experience around those things so that you develop a game that they are going to absolutely love. And I think, and then of course the marketing falls out of those things, right? And if you think about them from the beginning, you're in a much better position to reach success than if you spend the beginning time developing this game and then realizing when you go to focus group the game, oh gosh, my target market is really not into these core pieces that I put in, and I'm going to have to go back and rejigger things. So yeah, I think right from the beginning is really when you need to think about it. Mm-hmm.
Jeff, would you?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing, and I speak at a lot of conferences, and there's something, I'm going to steal a line James just quoted to me from earlier that actually sums it up better than I usually say it, which is, you can be in the games market for a lot of reasons, but you have to decide, are you an amateur or are you part of a company making a game? If you're an amateur, you can go do anything you want. You can have fun making games. I was a modder for 10 years. I never sold a thing I didn't want to. I programmed MUDs, I modded all sorts of games. But if you're in this as a business, if this is what you're doing, if this is your job, you depend on being able to sell a product to people. You know, games are software development. They're awesome software development, but you have to, if you want to make a living off something, you have to be able to sell something, which means you have to make a product or a game that people want to buy. And that's in a lot of cases the difference between an amateur making something for themselves and somebody putting together a business that they can sell and keep, you know, bring in money so that they can go make their next game and their game after that. And if you're thinking about this, if this is what you do as a living, if this is your job, you need to make something that people want to buy. And so you need to consider market viability right from the beginning, otherwise you're an amateur. You're making something for yourself. You know, if you're going to go do films, if you're going to go write books, if you're going to go do anything else in the entertainment industry as a professional and make a living doing that, you have to be serving an audience. And this is something that most game developers don't think about, even really big studios. And they make things that end up, you know, costing them this much time and effort, and they get this much money in return, and they go out of business, and they don't get to go make another one. So this is a critical thing. And, you know, I've dealt with this for over 20 years now. And it's just, it sucks.
And it's not that you necessarily need to let your idea of what the audience
Oh, yeah.
wants drive you. I mean, I don't know a single game developer, certainly not any game designers, that don't have a stack of ideas a mile high for games they want to make.
Yeah. But it's choosing the right one to make.
Exactly. It's like, okay, well, this is an appropriate time to do X, or people are really looking for that great game where you've got a grandma in a wheelchair skiing down a hill. I don't know.
And there's a lot of stuff, and we can talk about that later, but I mean, there's a lot of games you could make for the one that you decide to make.
Yeah.
And it's also, the way that I see it, at least, is also you're creating this one game, this puzzle game, and you're maybe 25 years old and a female. And therefore, it's very easy to presume that that's who you're making those games for. So, being able to have a good market understanding that usually no, that's not what you're targeting. You're actually targeting another group. Yeah. And I think that's
I could use my pony example then.
Yeah,
you know, I have some friends that worked on a My Little Pony game. They were not people who played My Little Pony games, but they were professionals, and they made the best damn My Little Pony game for the audience that wanted to play that they could, because as professional designers, that's what they do. They make the best game for the audience and the property they're making. And that's the mark in a lot of cases of a professional, is you make the best thing for your audience. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's very awesome. Okay, let's see here.
Sorry, I took too long on that.
No,
I'm very passionate about that.
We're doing all right with time. We were worried about time, but we're doing all right.
All right.
So let's, so another question, very short and sweet question that was given to us was, what does success look like? And we thought we'd start off with Dimitri answering that question.
Well, it's interesting because I wasn't sure because the person who asked it didn't tell us whether they meant what does our success look like or what does your success look like. So
let's go with theirs.
In a way, I mean, they're kind of similar, right? Like, I mean, for us, or for me at least, and I think we're on the same page with this, is that success means getting to make the kinds of games that that we say in our mission statement we want to make. The hypothetical 25-year-old making a male making a shooter for 25-year-old males is great, but there's a lot of people doing that, and I think getting to make games that are from the sort of underserved developers and keep doing that and have those games be successful artistically, financially, critically, and being able to keep doing that, that's success for sure. And how about for them, Jeff?
So it's something that I cover in a couple of talks. There's a lot of things for success. Success could be making money. That's a definition of success, but there's a lot in the game industry because making enough money to make your next game, that's awesome. But your success could be, hey, we want a studio that puts out a game. I want to say I put a game on the Xbox or on the Wii. Or it could be, I want to start a new IP. You want to make a game that starts a new brand. You say, you know what, I started this. Or it could be putting out a project good enough that that gets you notice to go make your next game. Or it could even just be, I want to learn a piece of technology. I want to put a game together that lets us learn while we do this. I mean, there's so many definitions of success in the game industry, and a lot of it is figuring out what you personally value. You know, figuring out, because it's hard to win if you don't know what your win condition is.
Well, and I want to add to that because, as you said, there are lots of other definitions of success. And I was at a conference right before this, and a buddy of mine came up who just recently released a game, and showed me an email from a young woman who told him his game changed her life, right? And for some, I mean, that is also success, right? And there is that doesn't conflict with making money.
No,
right?
not at all.
And so for a lot of people out there, that may be the goal. And I think even for Snow Cannon, to me, success is making the world a little bit better of a place. And I think there's no reason that we often think of those things in opposition. And I think that here, one of my goals is to make sure we don't, right?
One of the 2 best letters I've ever gotten for a game was back from EverQuest. I got emailed by somebody who met their wife playing the game. And they played for so long, and he met her, and they played together, and he ended up proposing to her. And just as a personal thing, making a game that some people could enjoy so much that they would fall in love in the game and get married was awesome.
Yeah,
that's a high bar for us to repeat.
But
we want you all to get married.
In game.
Well, and I mean, I've had the same thing. I've had people who've written me about the fact that they were going through depression, right?
Yeah.
And they were struggling with it, and this world that we had created gave them the escape that they needed to get through that period in their life, right? So these are powerful things, and success can be measured a lot of ways, but that's certainly one of them to me.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I'm speaking more on Snow Cannon Games' success, but no, I guess the games market. No, I'm gonna.
No, go.
Say it. But for me, I feel success is a lot of sort of not leveling the playing ground, but challenging the playing ground, making sure that really good or groundbreaking indie games can actually get to compete with the AAA or the more blueprinted games. I want to see that happen, and that would give me a lot of pleasure, and that would make me feel that there was
and not just by like being, you know, miniature versions of that stuff too, because that's not. I mean, like that may be financially successful, but that, to my mind, is not artistically successful.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. So the next question is, would you consider publishing a mobile game project, or do you mainly want to focus on PC-mobile games? And
PC or console games.
Yeah, I guess, we wrote it down wrong.
I wrote it down wrong.
So if we would consider to publish mobile games?
I guess that's the question, and not just focus on PC and console. Yeah.
Well, certainly. I mean, we would look at any project, and if we find it interesting, we'd publish on any platform. Also, we see that the games move between the platforms, so to exclude one platform would be not a very smart thing of us to do, I think.
And I mean, our whole mission statement is to not exclude, right?
So. And to exclude mobile in particular would be very stupid, considering it's one of the kind of growth forces now. I think you could also flip that, because I also said that we would do some work to bring the threshold down to work with a publisher, and on mobile, actually, because of the sheer numbers of things, the challenges are even greater, and this has also driven prices down. So free-to-play model have kind of been introduced. And this also introduces a new need to developers, and that's live game support. And I think we have a lot to offer on that side of things in order to help your game monetize while consumers play it. I mean, if you look at it, this industry is digital from development through distribution to consumption, which makes it maybe the most data-driven industry on the planet. Also then the most analytic-driven industry. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities in mobile.
On top of that, we figured out before that if you even without including Jeffrey's business, which kind of technically covers all of the consoles, of the folks here, we've worked on every console, PC, and handheld iterations since the 6th gen of consoles. So since
like PS2,
yeah.
PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Wii U, 360,
Vita,
One, yeah,
PSP, all of that
DS,
stuff.
yeah.
DS.
yeah. So why would we not do it again? We're leaving Emmy out. Give an Emmy a question. Is there an Emmy
Well, the
question?
next one is for all of us.
Okay, that counts.
Don't worry, I'll get this one.
Yeah. But I kind of had a little follow-up because, and that's just me being new to this, because I have noticed that all of you have kind of worked with all platforms and all genres as well. Is that normal in the industry, or are you guys just a little bit more experimental than the rest? I'll let you, Emmy, answer.
I mean, as a consultant, I think you tend to work with multiple platforms and genres just because, it's not like you own the company that is making the game. Yeah. So in my role as a consultant, before I came over full-time to Snow Cannon Games, I did work across multiple genres and platforms. So I think from the consulting angle, that probably is fairly typical. And I know, James, you do consulting work too, and you can probably speak to that a little bit as well. And Dimitri too.
Yeah, I mean, just for me at least, I had always wanted to be a better designer rather than just a better Call of Duty designer, and so I wanted to see more games. And the way to do that was to consult. I mean, it's perfectly legitimate. I see lots of people in this industry who stay in one company and one job for 20 years, right? But I don't think that's any of us.
Yeah.
I think
3 companies in 20 years.
Right.
Oh, that's different for the games business.
Yeah.
I think I'm either 4 or 5 at this point. And it depends if you count this one. Now we're at least 6.
Okay, yeah, that puts me to 4.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, 5. Never mind.
Right. So I do think that we've all pushed towards seeing more things in our careers than we necessarily had to. But
yeah, the other thing about the games business is that the ground changes beneath you, right?
Yes.
So if you're in the business for 20 years,
Yeah.
you're going to see 3 console shifts during that time period alone.
No, but when I started, social wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
much less mobile,
Yeah.
right? Much less tablet.
Actually, that's a great thing to point out. When you're thinking of making games, platform is interesting, but don't depend on it.
Yeah.
I mean, these could go away tomorrow if somebody invented a better way of making calls than it wasn't a computer in your pocket.
Which sounds ridiculous, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
But
Facebook.
think about it, right? When the iPhone came out initially, right? Like there's
The phone market was dying for
president
games.
of the largest computer software company in the world was on stage making fun of it.
Right. Well, I mean,
and where are they now?
and on the flip side, right? Social was all the rage 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And today,
I'm
nobody
going
makes
to
social.
do a talk at some point at GDC, which is people keep telling me everything will be. Everything's going to be mobile, console, free to play, MMOs, subscription, and it's never
VR.
true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
But not only does it all
the game industry is great. We expand, we take over every piece of hardware out there and make it a gaming platform.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And the stuff doesn't go away either.
No.
That's another thing that people don't take
Yeah.
into account with,
Yeah.
it's like, console is dead. Console was supposed to be dead 5 years ago.
Yeah.
AAA right now on consoles making more money per game than it ever has before. Mobile's making more money this year than it ever has before. Web is still making a tremendous. The only thing that's gone down in the past 5 years is handheld, like Vitas and DSs, and that's because suddenly we have these everywhere. And there's 100 billion, figuratively, games sold.
Yeah.
Actually, it's
Seems
closer.
like it.
Well, let's see. There was 100,000 last year. There's going to be 120.
You do this math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you make your statement.
No, I'm.
Oh, we were right. We just
Okay.
sit silent while he
Let's get
maths.
the last one.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's see.
Okay.
In the last 3 years, there's been 250,000 of them.
Of games made or games?
Games made just on iOS.
Yeah.
That's
Terrifying.
But I mean, I
yes.
think you were probably pretty close. I'm sure there are at least tens of billions of games sold on the iOS.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Give me an extra 2 minutes, I'll figure that out.
Excellent. By the way, just as a comment, this is very much like what a team meeting for Snow Cannon
Yeah,
looks
it's
like.
true.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So the last question that we have is, what do you think a publisher brings to a boutique indie developer? So we thought we'd start with you, James.
Okay.
And to let you guys know on the time, we have about 15 minutes actually. So
Oh, wow.
if
Great.
you guys feel like you want to elaborate and start discussing amongst
open it
yourselves, that's all right.
Well, that's too bad because my answer is actually really simple.
There you go.
So for me, for a publisher, for an indie, a publisher should free you up to do the thing you're really good at, right? You should be making games. Publishers should be handling the rest of it. You've got all this other stuff you got to do. You got to do PR, you got to do marketing, you got to do your analytics, you got to get distribution. And that takes away so much time. You're a 3 or 4 person team. That takes away so much time from making your game. And we all know that it's impossible to ship a game that's ever as good as you know it could be. And it's always, if I just had a little bit more time. And so I would like to see a publisher do exactly that, free you up to do the thing that you love and you're great at.
Yeah, and part of that just goes along with it. I mean, just because you're good at making games doesn't mean you're good at selling games. I mean, just flat out. The skills to go sell a game, to take it, to get it into a store, to market it, to distribute it, to make other people interested is a different skill set from making awesome games. I mean, it's it's like saying, hey, just because I'm a good baker, I'd be great at running a bakery. No, that's a radically different, I mean, there's all these different things, and part of the job of a publisher is to let the creative people, as James was saying, be and make the awesome thing without having to worry about all of the things that aren't in their core skill set. And that's really what a publisher should bring to a developer.
Yeah, I think another one is even simpler than that, is like just the relationships. I mean, a lot of indies are not folks that have, some of them are, but are not folks that have been in the business for 20 years or who have a giant team that is composed of people that have made tons and tons of stuff over the years. So you don't happen to know the right person at Nintendo to call about getting your game onto the platform. Well, that's a thing that a publisher can do. Or any of the other.
Or you need an intro to Oculus to get a couple of dev kits.
Right. I mean, exactly. Like those are the kinds of things that a publisher's job. It interestingly works much better for indies than it does for the big devs, because the big devs all have people like that, on the inside. But if you're only 3 people, it's
or
kind
10 people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a big ask to be like, oh yeah, which one of you has the best friend at Apple? No? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think to go along with that, in addition to the relationships, I think a publisher can also offer best practices. We all have a lot of experience in our specific disciplines. And from those years of experience, we have done a lot of testing, trial and error throughout our careers. And from doing all of that, we've learned best practices so that our clients don't have to go through the excruciating pain of learning it on their own.
We suffered, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We have all, I was going to say fucked up, but fucked up badly before with millions of dollars on games. Yeah. And it's awful, but you learn a lot from messing up. I mean, you learn more from failure. But the nice thing is you can also learn from other people's failure. And we've all learned both from our own and watching a lot of other people. We have seen a tremendous amount of failure. And it's just part of the industry. But it doesn't always have to be.
And that, just to expand on that a little bit too, Jeff, that goes beyond just actual design and development. It extends into things like distribution and marketing. So, just as much as you guys might be able to, look at a game and say, okay, well, here are some best practices for engaging your users so that your retention rate expands. We can also look at, things that you might be doing online and say, that's great, but here's something you can do to increase your traffic by 15% or whatnot.
Or your revenue by 15%.
Yeah.
It's also, another thing that I've observed, at least, is that you see these game developers and they have to be entrepreneurs on top of being really great game developers. You see these wonderful games, and then you see the game developers just burning out because they have to learn everything about marketing, and they have to learn everything about finances and everything, and it's we don't want that. We want to make sure that game developers can focus on getting great games out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can keep, you know, getting these underserved kind of voices out in the open.
Yeah, right.
Espen wants to say something.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also because there are so many things we actually can help with. I mean, one of the things that kills games, that really makes them sink to the bottom of the ocean, is early negative feedback.
Yeah.
And this often happens when the team is stressed out to get the thing finished. Budget is running out, and everything is. You've been working on a project for a very long time, so you're tired and you're fed up with the whole thing, maybe. And there we can provide many things. We can provide funding for one thing in that very critical phase, in addition to, of course, contribution to the marketing side, and also help with polish and testing of the game, you know, and systematic get rid of bugs, and maybe add some inspiration for last minute things to kind of make the experience even better.
Yeah.
One of the single highest correlations you can find between game success and any one thing is basically polish factor. Games that come in with a high degree of polish and very few bugs and flawless execution sell tremendously better than games that don't.
Yeah, and
that's part of the Blizzard magic.
Right. Like in your own dev career, how many times have you been in that situation where it's just like, all right, well, I have a choice. You know, I can either pay attention to, you know, making sure that this thing ships without bugs, or I can try and start the press cycle off in a good space, and it's just like, oh my God, don't take that on yourself. Yeah. I'm like trying to talk to my past self about this. No, let someone else do it. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it's going to end with me. I guess I've already pretty much said what I feel is important, but I feel that a publisher brings that help and stability to game developers, and that's definitely what I want. We want people.
Or this publisher.
Yeah.
Not all publishers do that.
No. But we want to do that. We want to make sure that there is not exactly safe space, but a stable space for great creativity and great innovation within game developing communities. Bye, Internet.
Bye, Internet.
We
love you, Internet. Thank you.